Most of us have never heard of the most painful or unfair deaths, but have you ever heard about some of the most embarrassing deaths? From death by deodorant to a man who died on his couch from laughing for 25 minutes straight, some of these deaths won't even sound believable. Make sure to like and subscribe before we get into the video. Let's get right in. Number 10. Sand. It's not so surprising to die by sand, because in the United States, there have been over 30 deaths from sand cave-ins. Daniel Jones suffocated when an 8-foot deep sandy hole suddenly caved in as he sat on a beach chair inside it. Observers at Buxton, North Carolina's Outer Banks Beach said that he may have dug the hole for privacy and wind protection. His death may have been stopped, but other people on the hands of the beach and on the shovels of plastic toys struggled to find their way to Jones. Dare County Sheriff Bert Austin said, "You wouldn't believe the outburst of concern. People digging with their hands, using pails from kids. Rescue workers with heavy equipment took nearly an hour to free him from 5 feet of sand, while 200 people looked on." The 21-year-old resident of Woodbridge, Virginia was pronounced dead on Thursday. Number 9. Robot murder. From the words robot murder, you might anticipate that a robot malfunctioned and went on a killing spree. However, the death was different. Kenji Urata was a factory worker from Japan who was killed by a robot. The first person killed by a robot is sometimes mistakenly stated to be Urata, but on January 25, 1979, Robert Williams, a worker from the Ford Motor Company Flat Rock Casting Factory, was killed by a robot over 2 years earlier. At the Kawasaki Heavy Industries plant in Akashi, Urata was a repair worker. He died while testing a malfunctioning robot. He unintentionally started the robot after jumping over a safety barrier, which was intended to shut down power to the computer when opened. Designed under a license from Unimation by Kawasaki, the robot pinned him against an adjacent computer and either crushed him or stabbed him in the back. Other workers in the factory couldn't stop the machine as they were unfamiliar with its operation. Urata was identified as the first human killed by a robot on December 8, 1981, by the international newswire service UPI. Until after an inquiry by the Hyogo Labor Standards Bureau was concluded, the circumstances of his death were not made public. The investigation found that the machines were not known to staff, and the machines were not properly monitored. The robot that killed Urata was removed from the Akashi factory, and in the aftermath of the accident, human high fences were erected around the other 2 robots in the plant. Stay tuned to hear about someone died just by a single flashlight. I mean, is that even possible? Number 8. Death by desserts. How could someone possibly die from dessert? As impossible as it sounds, Adolf Fredrik, King of Sweden, died after eating too many semlas. He celebrated the holiday in a conventional way on Shrove Tuesday on February 12, 1771, by consuming a number of pleasurable foods in preparation for the Lent season. Adolf Fredrik had a dinner on February 12th which included lobster, caviar, kippers, sauerkraut, boiled pork, and turnips. The king, however, was not like other people. He had an exceptionally big appetite and may have been used to overeating. He chose to have semlas for dessert after washing the meal down with champagne. Although most Swedes are currently consuming 4 or 5 semlas between New Year's and Lent in one sitting, the king wanted to eat 14 of them. More incredibly, these were not only plain old semlas. Each was served to the king in a bowl of cinnamon and raisin-flavored hot milk. Adolf Fredrik eventually agreed to avoid eating, following his intake of semlas. The same day, he died from the stomach complications that he ended up having from his big meal. Number 7. Slipping on an orange peel. Although Annie Taylor did it on October 24, 1901, Bobby Leach was the second person to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel, accomplishing the feat on July 25, 1911. He spent 6 months recovering from injuries he received during the fall, including 2 broken kneecaps and a fractured jaw in the hospital. Leach, with the Barnum and Bailey Circus, was a competitor and was no stranger to stunting. He owned a restaurant on Bridge Street before his ride over the falls and would joke to clients that whatever Annie could do, he could do better. In 1920, Leach moved back to Niagara Falls, New York, and ran a pool hall. He tried to swim the Whirlpool Rapids when he was in his 60s, but failed after many attempts. Bobby Leach was rescued during these aborted attempts by William Red Hill Sr., a riverman who knew the falls well and became well known for later rescues in the area. Leach fractured his leg in 1926 while on a promotional tour in New Zealand when he slipped on an orange peel. The leg became infected, and gangrene finally forced the leg to be amputated. 2 months later, Leach died of complications. Number 6. Death by flashlight. Ever heard of karma during a burglary? In February 1997, Santiago Alvarado was burglarizing a bicycle shop in Lompoc, California. To keep his hands free while on the store's roof, Santiago had placed a flashlight in his mouth. Unfortunately, he fell face first onto the floor, and the flashlight crushed right through his skull, securing his tragic death. Stay tuned to hear about someone dying by hair. Usually, the hair on our head falls off and dies before we die ourselves, but looks like it is a special case for this guy. Number 5. Deodorant heart attack. A coroner heard that Jonathan Capewell, a 16-year-old teen, had 10 times the lethal dose of propane and butane in his blood. He became obsessed with smelling fresh, so he would coat his whole body in deodorant at least twice a day. Since suffering a heart attack, the schoolboy died. It is suspected that after months of regularly spraying himself in the bedroom of his home in Whitebank Lane, Oldham, Greater Manchester, gases built up in his body. Will this death make you even more cautious when using deodorant? Number 4. The shocking. Last Tuesday night in Caloocan City, a 22-year-old man who had one drink too many boasted to friends that he can make electricity run through his body without any ill effects, paid dearly with his life. Witnesses told probes that Roderick de la Cruz, single, of Bagong Silang, Caloocan City, shook in agony uncontrollably as electric current rippled through his body after touching an exposed live wire in his elder brother's Rogelio's home, where the drinking session took place. De la Cruz, who suffered burns of the 3rd degree in most parts of his body, was rushed to the hospital, but died before reaching the Memorial Hospital of St. Jose Rodriguez. PO1 investigation Reynaldo Placido of the Station Investigation Bureau announced that the incident occurred at about 7 p.m. at his brother's house in the same neighborhood, not far from Roderick's home. The victim went to his brother's house for a few drinks, but as the alcohol started to take effect on him, he bragged to his mates that he had a way like no other with electricity. He supposedly took a wire from the ceiling to prove his unbelieving audience that he was not bluffing, and twirled its exposed end with his bare thumb and index finger. Rogelio allegedly cautioned his sibling against doing something stupid, but before his skeptical audience, Prober said it apparently fueled his urge to be proved correct about his accusations. The startled man screamed out in pain, and in a split second as the current took its toll on his drunken body. Number 3. Death by hair. There are several people in the world with abnormally long hair, but only a few have died from it. Back in 1567, Heinz Steininger was Brunau am Inn's mayor, a town in Austria and a famous one at that. In addition to the fact that he was well loved by his people, he had impressive facial hair. Steininger was well known for his beard, a sight that was 4.5 feet long, dangling from his face in a long tendril completed with a forked tip. Steininger normally kept his facial hair rolled up and tucked into a pocket neatly. However, on September 28, 1567, a fire erupted in the town of Brunau am Inn. The fire caused a decent amount of panic. At some point, his beard fell loose from his small beard pocket as he tried to quench the commotion. He didn't take the time to roll it back up and instead moved it out of the way while the town was on fire. That's been his downfall. When standing at the top of a flight of stairs, he slipped on his own beard in the middle of the confusion and stumbled. He stumbled down the entire flight of stairs as he fell, breaking his neck in the process. Upon his death, in the form of a broad stone relief on the side of St. Stephen's Church, the city erected a memorial to their fallen mayor, so that his name could never be forgotten. Then, as if it were not enough for the giant stone statue of him, the town went a step further. The townspeople cut off the beautiful beard of Hans Steininger before he was buried, and locked it in a long glass case in the town's historical museum, ensuring that it was not useless for all the years he had spent growing it. It has been maintained chemically so that it never degrades. Stay tuned to find out how someone died from laughing. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. Number 2. Shooting a cactus. You're probably wondering, who would randomly decide to shoot a cactus with a gun? David Grunman would. In 1982, this 27-year-old man in southern Arizona fired several close-range shots with a shotgun at a saguaro cactus. The cactus, which stood around 26 feet tall, dropped a 4-foot branch on top of Grunman's head, crushing him to death. Number 1. Too much laughter. The evening of March 24, 1975 began for Alex Mitchell, a bricklayer from Kings Lynn, Norfolk. He sat down to watch an episode of The Goodies after dinner, his favorite TV show, and one he watched regularly every week. When a kilt-wearing Scotsman with a stick of black pudding assaulted the star of that episode, and the Scotsman defended himself with a bagpipe, Mitchell lost it. He began to laugh uncontrollably, and he slipped off the sofa after 25 minutes of non-stop laughter. Having suffered a fatal heart attack, at that time, Mitchell's death became very popular, and his wife finally wrote a letter to the Goodies, thanking them for making the final moments of life so fun for her deceased husband. In 2011, it was discovered that when his granddaughter was rushed to the emergency room after a heart attack and was diagnosed with LQTS, Mitchell had possibly suffered from a long QT syndrome, which is a heart rhythm condition that can cause fast and chaotic heartbeats. If the sufferer undergoes constant exertion or discomfort, such as laughing non-stop for 25 minutes, the condition, which is inherited, causes the heartbeat to become erratic. An irregular heartbeat could cause a heart attack, and that's probably what Alex Mitchell did. Did any of these deaths make you more cautious about certain things? Were some too far-fetched? Make sure to comment down your opinions and what other deaths do you think is even more hilariously stupid. Like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next top 10.